Okay, so here's one that's a little before my time, but out of all the Avalon Hill classics I've picked up, some of them are a little bit of fun. This one I think I probably enjoy the most. I'm no expert at it by any means. People have played these to death and just know how to do things, and I've probably played it less than a half dozen times total in my life, maybe right around there. I just finished playing a two-player game with it, and I wanted to put this on the table just to highlight some aspects of it and show people who maybe are looking at today's introductory offers a way to look at some of the older games that brought people into the hobby. For me, by the time I saw these, I was already deeply in, and most of them I said, ugh, I just don't really, I prefer my S&T Mag games or something like that. Well, this one in particular, I didn't have anything at this level of play. In fact, when I bought Africa, which has to be up here somewhere, no, not DAC. When I bought Africa, my thought had been, I remember that being somewhat lighter than Desert Fox Trail of the Fox, somewhere in between this and that. And the reality is, it's not too much lighter than Desert Fox. So this is actually the only game that I have that covers a campaign that I rather enjoy, the North African campaign, at a very accessible level. I wouldn't expect someone to pick up Africa as their first game, at least not the edition that I have. Maybe the second edition with the SCS rules is a little bit lighter and easier. I've heard that. In which case, there it is. Right next to Throne World. That makes sense. I used to keep these all organized by time, but it's so hard now. Anyway, there's some things that I really like about this. The simplicity, the still focusing and bringing supply to the forefront in the game, sort of, because it is so vital in this game. Let's take a look at what the rules are like, but I wanted to kind of give a view. This is something Avalon Hill did in almost all of its early games, this order of appearance chart, these player aids, in this case on the board and on a separate sheet, in order to help you with setup. And that was just, for me, a fantastic aspect that I love to see. And so few games have it. I don't know how much it really helps, but it gives you a place to sort the counters to, and it's kind of cool and brings me back. Let's take a look at the components. You get the rules, and they aren't too complex. We'll be going through them. Only 4 pages. That sounds about on par with today's introductory stuff. You get this battle manual. Already Avalon Hill's putting out, and GMT kind of takes this up now with the playbooks, a book of examples, a little bit of historical information, not enough to really interest anybody more who's already interested in this topic. They probably know a significant amount. And examples of some of the odder situations. And then, of course, the perennial question and answers, which is their way of, like, refining the rules or something after they've written them. This wonderful box that kept me from buying this game, much as I was interested in it when I was a teen, I saw this and said, no. I had a few, like Blitzkrieg, already, I believe, and was already aware just how light and simple these games would be and how much they didn't really interest me. But later, when I actually picked this one up, and I got it at a tag sale or something, as you can tell, but it was in good condition. All the pieces are there. There's actually somebody has a bunch of variant pieces here. I don't know what they're from or why they exist. I don't have the rules for them, and I'm not terribly interested in them, but I was pleasantly surprised, actually, compared to how I feel about most of these games that I've picked up of the older Avalon Hill variety. I'm trying to see if there's anything in particular that I'd want to highlight for that. Anzio was kind of boring playing. But an interesting game, I guess, still. Somewhere I should have some others, like, maybe I didn't bring them all. Or maybe they're elsewhere. You know, oh, I can't believe I didn't bring, oh, there's Midway. Midway's fun. There's Stalingrad. That would be one I don't terribly like. And I think I've got Battle of the Bulge up there, kind of above Fifth Frontier War. Anyway, out of these very early ones, these are the games that that I was never terribly interested in. Okay, but this one intrigued me always. It's got some high points, some low points. So let's go quickly over the instructions. First of all, really standard stuff, right? Each unit has some designation, historical designation, size. None of that makes a difference in this. What matters? Attack strength, defense strength, and movement factor. That's it. Designation of units barely matters. Armored units, including armored infantry, or mech-inf in later parlance. I don't know why they're armored infantry here, but whatever. The British are able to, and by the way, that's one of the interesting things. The British are blue, the Germans are pink. Feels a little funny to me. I expect the Germans to be kind of this grayish color, and the English, I don't know, brown, but again, later advances. At this point, it was always blue versus red or something. Anyway, they've got headquarters in it. There are no headquarters in this game as far as I know. They've got recon units. They just have a higher movement. But the armored units actually can be converted into better armored units later in the game. There's a stockpile of English units or Allied units that you can upgrade to. And infantry can actually be upgraded into denser infantry formations. For whatever that matters, the Allies get a lot of these 116 units. And at some point they're able to convert them by stacking them together into one larger unit, which is important because stacking in this game is 3 counters. And that's it. Anything exciting here? Well, movement is as you'd expect in a war game. You can move all your pieces across the board. There's some terrain effects. Basically what those are, this is, again, how early the game is, shows with these. First of all, there's the escarpments, or ridges, or whatever you want to call them. When you move into one of them, you got to stop. Okay, that's pretty simple. But what about road movement? There's this big coastal road, right? Key to the whole campaign, when everything was fought over. Most games increase your movement allowance by doubling it or something like that. In this, you basically get 10 free movement points along the road. Doesn't matter what you are. You could be foot soldiers, you could be... And it might be taking into account and abstracting the trucks that would be available to supply you. What's really exciting about this one for me is the supply counters. And they're vital to this whole scenario, especially if you want to maintain an offensive, but you need them on the map to even survive. Combat, pretty standard for a war game of this era. Each unit adjacent to an enemy unit must attack it. You can kind of divide that up so that you have multiple units from multiple stacks attacking one stack, or one unit attacking multiple stacks. All that works in a pretty standard fashion, and let me just show a quick example of that for anybody who's not used to these old war games. So let's take a couple British units, and I guess we'll take a couple German units. Now don't think of this as something I'm going to roll out or anything, but in a situation like this, every unit has to attack an enemy unit. So in this case, this one would have to attack this one would have to attack this, or vice versa. If we were in a situation like this, the pink unit would have to attack both of these, the 2 blue units would have to attack this. But it could be more complicated than this. Let's say we had a situation like this, and blue's attacking, or pink's attacking, it doesn't matter. Let's say blue's attacking. Blue could take 2-on-1 here, and 1-on-1 here, or they could do the other side. Pink likewise could attack both units from here or both units from here, and then the other one would have to attack. That doesn't go into all the specifics of it, but I think it gives the feel better than trying to explain the rules as they're written directly. When you read them, they may be a little confusing if you're not used to this kind of game. And the play aid, I'm sure, goes into them rather well. Okay, what about other issues of terrain? Well, we got these escarpments, and they double you on defense. And we've got the fortifications, and that's Tobruk and Benghazi, and they also double you. For fortifications, you don't have to attack into or out of them. You change kind of the rules a little bit. You can set up a siege and not have to attack them, which is different from most games I'm used to, and what is normal, you don't have to attack out of them. The escarpments, however, you do have to attack out of. You can leave. So these games have the concept of a zone of control, and if you watch my SPQR or whatever, you see that too. But essentially, the 6 hexes surrounding a unit are kind of a zone where you can't, when you move into it, you must stop, and you can move out of it. But when you move up against somebody, you have to stop and actually fight them. Now, this game has one weird little thing. It has this idea of an automatic victory. If you're able to get sufficient odds, now, combat's going to be resolved using this chart based on odds. It's like a lot of older war games. And you'll see it only goes up to 6 to 1. If you can break that, go to 7 to 1, with units that you've already moved, then you can ignore that enemy unit, both the zone of control and actually the hex he's in. You can walk right through him, which you usually can't do in any game, as though he's not there. There's one other option to that. If you've got him completely surrounded, you don't need 7 to 1. All you need is 5 to 1, which is actually quite possible. The 7 to 1 is pretty hard against any reasonable sized unit, but I saw the 5 to 1 happen in a game that I just recently played. How does supply work? Very simple. Supply wagons are necessary to make an attack. You cannot move up next to someone unless you have a supply wagon in place that can supply their attack. You can't even make the attempt. But more than that, the supply wagon has to be within 5 hexes of all the attacking units. They have to be able to trace supply to it, and a supply wagon is used up for those units. So every time you combat, every turn you have combat, you have to eat a supply wagon. If you have combats in different areas of the map, you might have to eat more than one. This is a problem because supply is very limited in this game. At the beginning of the game, each side gets 1 supply wagon. But as you go on, the Allies get 1 per turn. Up to a limit of 4. They have a countermix limit of 4 regular supply wagons. The Germans may or may not get 1 per turn. They roll on this little chart based on what turn it is. You mark the turns off, and there's 2 turns every month on this little sheet of paper. I'm going to use a China marker so that I don't constantly erase it, since I have a sleeve right now. You can see it had been marked by the prior owner. I think they had played once or twice, and I played at least once or twice as well, marking it. But I got this, so I might as well use it. All right. What else is there? There's reinforcements. They come in at your home space. There's some naval movement. Oh, I've made a mess. Which allows you to shift troops between your home space and Tobruk if you own it. And that can include your supply wagons, etc. But they spend a turn in transit. How do you win the game? Well, one way you win the game is by eliminating all your enemy's units. And that's possible if they have no supply. Because at the end of a turn in which they have no supply, well, 1 turn they're okay. 2 turns? No, they disappear off the map. So if you're able to do as I was in my little game, and cut a line and capture some enemy troops behind your line, they're out of supply. They can't attack because they don't have a supply source. And they will die in 2 turns. Alternatively, if the German player especially is willing to take some big risks, they may well use up all their supply to try to get Tobruk early. That actually happened. The German player was playing against me, managed to grab Tobruk a little early, taking a risk on the supply. Could have lost the game on a 1 or 2. She could have lost the game just because of no supply, but got lucky enough, got the supply on the board, and managed to make it all the way back, pushing me really to about here, this line here. We'll see how mine turns out. I think it'll be pretty similar. I don't want to go into all the rules. There aren't that many. Other couple of things. Eventually replacement points start coming in where you can rebuild your units. And like I said, the Allies have this sort of substitute unit counters where they can stack their units and get additional and bring in new counters or dead counters, whatever they want. Basically, better units, maybe more pieces per unit. They can go the other way too. They can break a unit back down into smaller pieces because that can be useful to extending a line over a greater area. I'll set this up and get started.